For the people listening, can you give a little bit of market research 101? So when you talk about like getting under their skin or kind of getting past what they want you to hear, what are some of the techniques you use to normalize that and to get more revealing information out of them?
I'm going to work with a couple of assumptions here. One is that the person doing this research has some ideas of what these people are already like, but that you have some really big questions. And this is maybe especially useful for any of your listeners who are targeting a market that's maybe going through some kind of transition, maybe especially given the current economic climate, where we're coming out of the world of nonstop change in the pandemic years. It's still kind of pandemic years, but not really. But now we're looking at global recession, so things are in flux. I'm going to go back to my two favorite techniques of interviews and surveys. Also, just kind of set the stage in case any of the listeners haven't done this in a while. Quick reminder that interviews are good for going deep. Interviews are good for your qualitative information, whereas the surveys, this is your quantitative. This is where you're going to get answers to hypotheses with statistical significance. Okay, so let's start out with the interviews. If you're building a messaging stack, you really need to understand just some basic things about a given persona. You need to understand what gives them satisfaction at their jobs. You need to understand what causes them pain at their jobs. And you also need a better understanding of how they interact with other people in the company, and in particular, what their boss holds them accountable for. So you're going to ask them those questions. But here's the issue. Most people, when they're doing an interview, their affective filter is ramped way up. They don't know you. They don't feel particularly comfortable. They also want to look good, right? Despite the fact that you will have assured them that their name won't be used anywhere, it's still a professional environment. You want to look good. Okay, so a couple techniques. Always start with a warm-up, and the only goal for the warm-up is just to get them relaxed, to help lower that affective filter, make them feel like they're talking with a friend. And a great question for this is something along the lines of, hey, I saw your work, saw your resume on LinkedIn. You've had an interesting career. Can you just tell me how you got to the job that you're at now? I like this partly because it's easy, also partly because everyone likes talking about themselves. And once they kind of get going, you can usually see it in the body language. They'll start to sit a little bit lower. They'll start to feel a little bit more friendly with you. And that's when you can start moving into slightly deeper questions. You want to know what they like about the job? Ask them. Tell me what you like about your job. And they'll tell you. The only thing is, though, what they'll tell you at first is going to be relatively basic, high level, not particularly connected to emotions, the basic stuff. Let them do that. But then push them a little bit farther. And one of the easiest ways to do that is to just ask why. So they said they like this. So that's really interesting. Tell me more about that. What do you really like about that? Now, the second answer that you get is still going to be relatively surface level, so just don't let it go. Keep digging. Depending on the person you're talking to, you can actually even ask them, so when this happens, this thing you've said that you like for this reason, how does that actually make you feel? Once they get used to the idea that you're looking for, more emotional, deeper things, and after the first time that they say it, they'll start to feel more comfortable. Then, of course, you need to, tell them, all right, I've asked you what you like. Then, clearly I'm going to ask what you don't like. This one is honestly even harder. And I find this is especially harder for people based in the US, where no one wants to suggest that they have problems at work. No one wants to suggest that there's something that they don't do very well or something they don't like doing. So keep asking why. And another thing that you can do is let them keep talking. And if they stop talking,
Then
inserting
exactly.
a pause there,
Yep.
inserting a pause, people get uncomfortable and they want to fill it.
Yep.
Let them, give them a little bit of silence, right?
Yep.
Here's another one though. And I'm actually going to give this one verbatim. So we'll pretend that I'm interviewing you. Okay, cool. Thanks for all that. So an expression that I've heard recently actually is called the Sunday scaries. Have you heard of that?
I have.
It's It's the okay. So Sunday afternoon, people start to get a little bit anxious about what's coming the next Monday. Now, I'm not suggesting that anything at your job could actually, cause you anxiety. But if it did, what would those things be? And what I like about that is first, it sets it up in something a little bit lighthearted. And then it's also not saying that anything actually makes you anxious. But, hypothetically speaking, one more. And I like saving this towards the end because it requires a little bit more analysis, and it also requires the person to be really relaxed. One thing that I like to understand is the way that people interact with other job functions, right? So instead of just asking them, so tell me about your relationship with this team, with that team, I actually ask them about stereotypes. And start from the outset by just saying, I don't want to hear about any specific person who you actually work with, but let's go down the list of the other functional groups that you interact with, and let's just talk about stereotypes. So those people in paid search, those people in social, those people in PR, those people, what are they like? I find that people are taken a little bit off guard by the question and give you really honest answers. And by interviewing people from each of those different functional groups and asking them about their the stereotypes that exist about all of the other functional groups, you end up getting this really cool 360 picture of how everyone functions or sometimes dysfunctions together.
And so you look at that composite and you kind of say, okay, these 5 departments shared on this 6th department, many different adjectives, but this one showed up in all 6. And then that becomes kind of almost a true stereotype, right? Like that's an identifiable trend that everyone thinks about them. Fascinating.
Hey, it's Elizabeth, the producer of the Drift Podcast Network. I hope you're enjoying this episode of Revenue Talks. If you're looking for even more go-to-market best practices, check out our ebook, GTM Lab. You'll get go-to-market hot takes and secrets from the industry's brightest minds on how to ignite every phase of your strategy, giving you even more ways to energize your marketing and sales efforts. Give it a read at drift.ly/GTMbook. Now, back to the show.
And what I love is it almost doesn't matter what's really true. The only thing that matters is what is perceived to be true.
Yes. Perception is reality. And that's and that's one of those things that I think marketers get either hung up on or take too liberally, right? And kind of just get way hopped up on their own hype, which is interesting. And so it's really, market research is not about finding cold hard facts. It's about finding what the perception is and then messaging towards that.